Yeah, just happened.
It's on the recording.
All right.
All set?
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Are you all set, Mark?
Yes.
Talking smack already.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call the regular select board meeting of Tuesday, May 27th to order. And the first item is approval of the agenda.
I move.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Note 10, 11, and 12, all the presenters for the different presenters for that have all asked for a little extra time, so they're not ready for tonight. So we'll pull those off. Is there anything else anybody would like to make for amendments on the agenda?
I believe the people here are interested in the petition that we received, and what
That
about
would
the
be-
idea of
that would
adding
be-
it to the consent agenda?
That would be when we get to the consent agenda, Fred.
Okay.
Anything else on the agenda?
It doesn't have to be pulled out of the consent agenda for me to speak.
Dan? When it's moved, we
If-
can pull it out.
Yeah, I said it, but it
If,
doesn't have to be moved.
Right.
if not,
For them
then
to speak.
everybody who would approve the agenda as drafted with the three removals, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All in favor then? Next is the consent agenda.
I'll move.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Anything on the consent agenda anyone would like to talk about? You'll notice that the mowing contract is done through the consent agenda here, and it was a
And the check warrants.
pretty significant. This is our second time on the check warrants, yeah?
Okay.
So,
Can they mow the lawns for the price that they get asked?
Well, that was a discussion in the infrastructure committee. It was a low
Yeah.
bid, but Luther Tenney made a very good point. He said sometimes businesses that want to expand in this area, they'll structure their bid so they get the business, and he said, you know, just check the references. So the infrastructure committee said, let's allow this to be forwarded, subject to the staff checking the references. I hope it was done.
So
Dave DiBiase was
Dave
doing
did call references, he was not able to get a hold of them. The thought is that it's a really low number, it's a 2-year bid.
Yeah.
We can test them out for this summer. If we're not satisfied with them, we terminate them. But it does give us the opportunity to try a different vendor.
where are they out of?
Burlington.
Burlington, yeah,
Trying to get into the Middlebury market.
it seems like it.
I think to provide a forum for our guests to discuss it, we should probably pull the note from Dr. Jack Meyer.
Is everybody here on Dr. Myers?
Mayor.
Mayor.
Sorry.
Everyone says mine.
Half of my family says mine, so we're okay.
So we'll pull that out, and if you would like to talk about it, it'll be the new number 10, okay? Or we could not have it in there, and you could do citizen comments, but I don't really think that that's necessarily, there are a lot of you here, so if you all want to speak about it, we'll talk about it at number 10 on the agenda, okay?
What time is that?
It's a rather
It's a short meeting.
It's a rather short meeting. It would be by 8.
Can we do it under comments?
Sorry?
Can we do it under comments?
Yes,
Then we'll leave it in the consent agenda.
yeah.
So there'll be no action the select board takes on it tonight, but we'll hear your concerns.
If
Okay?
it's, quick question, if it were under 10, is the idea that you would take an action on it, or it's the same?
That we would at least have the ability to take an action on it, if we wanted to. I don't know where the select board's at. We did talk about it at the last meeting, and the board was not in favor of, it's really a state and federal issue, and we didn't feel that that was necessarily where we wanted to get involved with, that was the discussion the board had. And So we obviously are just as concerned. Some of us are getting very close to that age. But we didn't feel it was something that we had, and actually some of us are in that group. So,
I guess I just wanted to clarify the difference between.
let me, we're not gonna get into a back and forth here. We'll go to citizen comments. So we're gonna leave it in, and we'll go to citizen comments, so.
The difference is that if we leave it in citizen comments, you can speak about it, but we are not
We don't take
obligated to
action?
take any, we don't take any action on it. We hear your comments and then we could decide to do something at a future meeting.
Are you still able to make a decision later on in the meeting, or?
Let's keep it as is. We're gonna leave it in the thing. We'll go to citizen comments, and then if we feel like we want to address it, we'll actually warn it as a warned event.
Okay.
So,
Okay, that makes sense.
why don't we leave it that way?
Yeah, okay, that's.
So, leaving the consent agenda as drafted. All in favor of approving the consent agenda as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody against? Okay.
I think it's an unnecessary
Citizen,
delay.
what's that?
I think it's an unnecessary delay in the action. They've submitted a lot of information. The people are here. I just think it's, I'm gonna
They don't want
oppose.
to, they don't want to wait, Fred. So we're going to do it this way, okay? All right, citizen comments. I know that there's some of you are here to speak on, Jack.
Thank you for hearing my comments. My name is Jack Mayer. In the 1980s, I was the only pediatrician in eastern Franklin County. One particularly memorable day, I spoke by phone with a worried mother of a sick child, a toddler named Brian Lucier. Mrs. Lucier was doing the best she could for Brian, but day by day, he was getting sicker. I was concerned by her account of Brian's illness and said I needed to see him right away. She hesitated, but finally agreed to bring him to my office. The mill where Mr. Lucier worked didn't provide health insurance. The Luciers, a proud Vermont family, didn't like to be in debt. She came to the office with Brian. Brian had meningitis. He was desperately ill. Had I seen him 1 or 2 days earlier, I could have prevented this deadly illness or at least intervened early enough to successfully treat him. Mrs. Lucier, I said, it was hard to ask this question, but I had to know. Did you wait because of the money? She nodded and took another tissue. Is that why he's behind on his shots? She nodded again. Brian survived, but was permanently and severely damaged by the meningitis. I published an essay about this tragedy in the Journal of the American Medical Association, and it is included in a collection of medical essays called A Piece of My Mind. I've been a Vermont primary care pediatrician since 1976. I have a master's degree in public health and have also been a cancer researcher with NIH funding. With the collaboration of Michael Palmer and Ellen Oxfeld, we have written a resolution regarding proposed federal Medicaid funding cuts in Vermont's healthcare crisis. We urge the Selectboard to consider and pass this resolution. The whereas section of the resolution is informed by data from the Vermont Department of Health and Kaiser Family Foundation. This is not a partisan resolution. We are proposing this resolution as a response to the unfolding healthcare crisis in Vermont and in the U.S. There is an increasing urgency now in the wake of the House of Representatives' passage of the budget bill, which will throw between 7.5 and 8.5 million people off Medicaid and has taken aim at Medicare as well. That will hurt us locally. This is certainly within the purview of the Select Board's authority and responsibility. I received a statement from Bob Ortmeyer, president of Porter Medical Center, that I'd like to read to you. Statement of support of Middlebury Select Board resolution regarding proposed federal Medicaid funding cuts and Vermont's healthcare crisis, May 7th, 2025. Thank you to the Middlebury Select Board for proposing the resolution regarding proposed federal Medicaid cuts and Vermont's healthcare crisis. I appreciate the Select Board raising these pertinent concerns about the large looming cuts Congress is contemplating for Medicaid. Porter Medical Center and the University of Vermont Health Network have significant concerns about any cuts to Medicaid and the corresponding impact to our healthcare safety net. We are particularly nervous about the impact to the most vulnerable members of our communities: children, pregnant patients, the elderly, and individuals living with disabilities. The most vulnerable Vermonters will be left without health care coverage and unable to access critical health care services. We know that reducing Medicaid funding for states, however that manifests through congressional action, will add tremendous pressure to states, eroding health care systems and causing stress for low-income residents. We're committed to working with the state of Vermont in whatever way is most helpful to understand and plan for this impact. Sincerely, Bob Ortmeyer, President and Chief Operating Officer, Porter Medical Center. We see a tsunami of threats to our health care, which also impact our local and state economies. 4 Vermont hospitals are close to bankruptcy. Porter is a major employer here in Middlebury and Addison County. Our resolution, if passed, will serve to inform the public about the specific nature of the challenges we are facing. This resolution will encourage other select boards in Vermont to echo our concerns, putting further pressure on the legislature to act. Healthcare is a major driver of costs in hospitals, nursing homes, education, mental health services, home health and hospice, and more. We are just getting by now. Significant cuts will increase the stresses and imperil our critical services. Please consider this resolution as an expression of concern and a desire by Middlebury to work proactively to prevent the harm that is sure to follow significant cuts to Medicaid. What happened to Brian Lucier should never happen to any child in America. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Mayer. Question for you. I understand wanting to get a lot of people calling out. Do you feel it's not being called out by Vermont and a lot of other states already? Not just that, but the, reducing SNAP and what that will do to the population, the vulnerable health care and their ability to maintain quality. I mean, what are you hoping to get out of this? Just curious.
My hope is twofold. One is that this will serve as a way of sort of informing the public about the nature and the extent and the dimensions of this threat to our healthcare. Because I don't think there's been adequate explanation and investigation into what the downstream effects of these cuts will be in local communities such as ours. And the other is that this will hopefully encourage and spur other select boards to express similar concerns and to look at the impacts on their particular communities. I think what's unique about a select board addressing this issue is that it really looks at what's going to happen in our community and what is the local impact. I think we hear a lot of explanation about how this will affect issues of healthcare on a broader national level, and to some extent on state levels, but I think we really need to be focused on how this is going to impact our local healthcare, our local economies, and local access to critical services. So I think it has that twofold impact.
Dr. Mayor, several weeks ago, I spoke to my doctor, and it was before I read this, and I asked her, what were her thoughts? What was the medical associations? I don't know all the associations you have. I've heard the American Medical Association. You're a pediatrician. There's pediatrician things. And I asked her what they were doing, and she was irate because nothing was happening except with the pediatricians. Nobody's speaking out. Those are the most powerful organizations in the country. They have a huge, huge voice, and they're not speaking out. Ours is a very, very small voice. Your profession needs the hospital. You guys have a great big voice with hundreds of thousands of members backed with a lot of money, and that's what they need to hear from.
They need to hear from everybody.
Amen is all I can say. And I think the frustration that your primary care physician expressed is something that I feel in spades as well. That I'm not sure why our professional organizations, the American Medical Association, the Vermont's Medical Society, have not been more forceful in expressing the concerns and the consequences that we will experience. I think resolutions such as this, coming from the basic center of our democratic institutions, may help to prod them to taking more sort of aggressive action to intervene and at least inform their patients and the rest of our citizens about just the extent of the threat to their health care and their communities' economic and health well-being. Yeah, I share your frustration.
Right. And what are you and your colleagues doing with our legislator? Are you talking to our legislators, or?
I have talked with people from UVM, from the pediatrics department, from the State Medical Society, and they have been they've been understanding of the nature of the problem and the scale of the problem, the scope of the problem, and have been trying to work legislatively to deal with some of these issues. I have to say that from my perspective of watching this, not being in the legislature, that I haven't seen much. So there's this old saying that when the people lead, the leaders will follow. I think we're in a situation like that, and that more voices of concern coming from ordinary citizens and select boards will encourage their more and motivate them to be more active in legislative.
Okay, thank you.
I'll tell you what, you make some good points, and I think it's a disservice to not have a deliberative experience about this. Why don't we put this first on the agenda for the next select board meeting, so that it's, you know when it is, you come to the board meeting, and we'll do that, and then you can exit if you don't want all the entertainment of the rest of the meeting. But that way, it's warned, and that way we have an opportunity to be deliberative about it and maybe support such an act. I had a very informative briefing from Jessica Holmes on Thursday, and quite depressing about the state of our medical system here in Vermont and really throughout the nation. So You know, maybe you make a good point. Maybe it has to start at the people, but look, why don't we do that, if that's okay with everybody? We'll just hold. I think we've heard your comments and your plea, Dr. Mayor, and we'll move it to the agenda for the next board meeting, which is
June 10th, I think.
June 10th. I'd like to make sure I'm going to be able to be here. We'll see you June 10th.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank you.
for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You don't all have to leave.
It's good stuff.
June 10th. I won't be here, but that's okay.
Thank you.
Emily, it's uneventful now.
Town haven.
Thought you were going to have a nice audience, right?
I was excited for it, yeah.
Yeah.
You next time.
Thanks,
Think
Laura.
of some good questions, just.
So not much for infrastructure tonight. We put out our paving bids for the town-wide paving contract. We received 2 bids, one from Pike and one from DNF right in town. And we would like to recommend awarding the contract to DNF for this coming season.
I'm amazed at how close those 2 bids were.
I have never seen it so close.
Well, in my
Less than
years here, I've never seen
$3,500
it.
off. I think V-Trans doesn't have a lot of money this year, so they're not putting out a lot of packages because of all of the investment they've put into flooding. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, the infrastructure
So-
committee recommended going with low bid, so DNF, so I would move that we approve the awarding of the Town of Middlebury 2025 paving contract to DNF for $339,262.50.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on it?
So with that comment about less V-Trans, does that mean that the numbered roads are likely not getting a lot of improvements this season?
potentially. I think we'll see the reflection for quite a few years. I
Yeah.
know even our projects that were actively engaged with V-Trans, being Charles Monroe and the Exchange Street Roundabout, they haven't been encouraging the designer to work quickly, so.
Yeah.
But I will say, at least on the Charles Monroe one, they have selected a designer, so that one is advancing into the next phase. They're still on the 6-year sort of time frame, but,
Boy,
yeah.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Aye, and a thumbs up. Here we go.
All right, next on the agenda, the Middlebury River project. You may recall the town received a grant from, it's a USDA grant, 100% federally funded, for $519,235 after the flooding in the river in 2023. The grant was to repair the flood wall with the sheeting that was installed as part of the FEMA project in 2021. The proposal is to attach the sheeting to the wall, actually dowel it in, which it
Was
wasn't.
it not attached
It
before?
was not attached
Oh, that's why it
previously.
was able to pull out.
Yeah, and then the boulders were placed on top of the wall, and so when the boulders peeled, they peeled the sheets with them.
Huh.
So,
Clever.
unfortunate. So we will dowel it back on, and then the boulders are not going on top of that concrete platform, but instead at the toe, protecting the toe, which is the entire goal of that sheeting. Just protecting it from scour.
Is this contingent on remediating fill in the river?
This will utilize material that's in the river.
Okay.
There's been a large bar developed sort of just across from the wall.
Yeah.
And so the contractor will be utilizing that material, picking and choosing, and then the material that washed off of the wall during the flooding events is just downstream,
Okay.
creating a
Pull
bar.
back.
So they'll be pulling that back and utilizing it. The other component of this project is to do some more stabilization efforts on the slope just downstream, about 500 feet downstream of the wall on the south side of the river. And so we'll be utilizing the larger stone. It's pretty obvious which ones have been put in there by us as opposed to naturally occurring in the riverbed. So they'll be picking and choosing those to continue the stabilization effort.
Did the concrete situation get taken care of?
The regulators have come and looked at the concrete and gave two different options, either complete removal. So we did carry a line item in our bid, not to be paid for by the grant funding, not to be paid for by the town, but the property owner would have to pay for that portion of it. That was one option from the regulator. The other option was to have it engineered, essentially tuck it back into the slope and then engineer an actual stabilized material outside of it. So I think.
You gonna look at both options to see which is cheaper, or what?
Well, we're not getting involved in their
Okay.
decision process. I think that's up to them. But I think the cheaper option is removing the concrete.
Oh, it is?
Because I think they would have to handle it anyway
Okay.
to do the engineered alternative. They would have to move it all back in, so.
Okay.
Yep. Oh,
All right, any other questions?
So the only other piece of this, we received 4 bids, and I'm requesting approval not for the low bid, but the second low bid, which is Markowski. They did the initial effort in the river for the 2021 work with the FEMA grant. And because of that, they have historical knowledge, they have a lot of experience with concrete, and I think their costs that they put in the various categories shows that they recognize the critical component of the flood wall, whereas the low bid, I don't have any history with them. I think they're trying to get their foot in the door with this river work, but I don't know that they have the experience with concrete that we want in this situation.
and again, this is grant funded,
Grant funded, yep, it's within the,
and we have this discretion.
we got the approval from the funding agency that as long as we go through our procurement process, they're fine with.
Amazing.
We did the qualified bidders, are they all on the qualified bidders list already?
They're not, no, we did the qualified bidders for more engineering design, not for
Just for the
construction.
engineering
Yeah.
portion of it? Okay.
Yeah,
And where was Boulder out of?
they are out of Waitsfield. And so the river engineer that we're working with them is familiar. He's seen them at a lot of pre-bid meetings, just trying to get their foot in the door, but he also hadn't ever actually worked with them.
So they don't have a history of doing this type of work?
No, and it's pretty, I mean, it's a pretty different type of work if you don't have experience doing it, and for a project this size,
Yeah.
it just makes me a little bit nervous.
Markowski really jumped through hoops to come and help us on that anyway, so.
I know the funding agency did respond that they've worked with Markowski on a lot of projects and really appreciate the effort that they put in.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So I'll move to approve the proposed bid from Murkowski for $459,971.42, pending state approval of the proposed contract from the state of Vermont.
So we can change that wording because we do have approval from them.
pull the,
You need a
you okay with pulling the pending out?
Sure. Take the pending out.
Consider it taken out.
Second.
Yeah, my God, you guys are slow on the uptake
I
here.
know. When I have to start seconding things. God.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thumbs up. Second. And the wheel loader.
The wheel loader, so Dave put out a bid to replace our wheel loader. He received 3 quotes from different vendors, and he is recommending that we go with the option from United CNF, which is, it's a used machine, it's a 2023, but I think he said it only has, 225 hours on it, so very minimal hours, but a greatly reduced cost because of that. And they were also able to provide $89,000 for trade for our current loader.
No brainer.
What's that?
It's a no-brainer.
It seems like a no-brainer.
I see that it says that it reached the end of the life cycle, but it's still getting like $90,000 back.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's surprising.
it's a pretty good life cycle.
Yeah. Well, that's what we call an over-allowance in the industry.
Yeah, I think one of the points that Luther made, I know the college has been turning their equipment over faster because they are getting a better trade-in.
Okay.
And so it ends up costing a lot less on the front end.
So the infrastructure committee supported this and actually combined the two, both the purchase and the trade-in as one motion, twofer. You do it that way if you want.
Want to do it that way?
Okay, I would move to approve the purchase of a John Deere wheeled loader for United Turf, Ag and Turf for $109,000 with the trade-in for the town's current wheel-owned loader for $89,000.
Second.
Is that it?
I think so.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions on it? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thumbs up. Good.
All in.
Other project updates.
Just a couple of updates. The Mary Hogan stormwater treatment practice went out to bid. I'm not managing that project. It's being funded through the school. There's a grant within the state that the school is a 90-10 split. And so we joined with the school for the construction phase of the project so that we would benefit from that same funding. So Green Prince is managing the project, but it went out to bid. They received, I think, 3 different qualified bids, and it appears that the low bid is Champlain Construction. It's a little bit under what we had projected for cost, but we will be bringing a contract forward for RPR services with Otter Creek Engineering, who designed the school side of it. So they'll be on site anyway for their portion of it.
Is it RPR?
RPR, like the on-site construction inspection.
Okay.
Representative,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like you've caught me on that one before. Construction
Could be.
inspection. And so that will probably eat up the gap in what I had sort of allocated towards the project. But we're within budget and looking good for that one. So that one will be under construction this summer. We have some coordination with the circus and with the camps that we're keeping in mind. And swimming, there's a huge swim meet here this summer, so trying to coordinate all of that, because obviously we have to do it when the school is out of session.
Resident project representative.
Yes,
I
there you
believe
go.
is-
Thank you, Andy. The other note that I wanted to bring up, I know when we talked at the last meeting, we talked about the library and the EV chargers. I think we've resolved to just keep the conduit as it is to support the permit conditions. But the one thing we did circle back and look at was the curb spacing from the timber rail, and we are able to pull the curb out a foot. The parking stalls right now are 9 by 20. They are only required to be 9 by 18, so we would still have a 9 by 19 parking stall and
Great.
give that extra cushion.
No one's gonna crunch their grill.
No crunch, well,
Saved by Fred.
And it wouldn't change the width of the traveled way.
Right.
Good solution.
I think that's it.
Comment from Laura. Do you want to come forward?
Can I just ask a question about Mary Hogan?
Yeah.
Laura Summerly, so what is the hope of the stormwater mitigation at Mary Hogan? Is it to alleviate the swamping that's happening over walkways, or?
No.
No, it has nothing to do with that?
Nothing to do with that, but some of our paving might alleviate that. We are paving down there this summer. It is part of the 3-acre rule. We have 4 acres of impervious, and so we have to treat it up to current standards. So it's a major sand basin going in the parking lot area, and then 2 smaller bioretention cells going in sort of near the pump track and the skating rink.
So the paving is in the parking lot, that's what you're talking about?
Paving, not in the parking lot, well, we will pave the parking lot after we
Or the
completely
walkway.
deconstruct it and rebuild it. The walkways are getting paved, coming from the courthouse parking lot, and also like the main walkway that goes in front of the teen center all the way to the skating
So you're
rink.
gonna pave that
We're
now.
paving that, and we're going to make some repairs in front of the skating rink where the concrete sidewalk
Okay.
is needing attention.
Okay, and I know this is a different question, but swamping at the intersection of Mary Hogan Drive intersection there?
The puddle at the crosswalk,
Yeah,
that is not part of this.
yeah. So we just don't know how to figure that out. It's a real issue, especially when that freezes in the winter and it just,
We'll have to look at, I mean, we're
Yeah, I
not
don't
coming
know.
through their paving, we'll have to look at it. Maybe we
Okay.
can, I'll have to look at it. I know the puddle you're talking about.
okay.
It's quite famous.
It's quite famous, yes.
Is this,
Named puddles in
I know
there.
this puddle too.
Laura's,
is the puddle new?
No,
No,
no, it's everlasting.
I've never heard of it before.
Oh, you have?
it's at the southern Mary Hogan where the, across the street from the gas station, but it's like right in the crosswalk. So it is.
Where you
definitely-
come off the road and go down? Okay.
Yeah, and you can skirt it, but it is a very popular crosswalk, especially for not just Mary Hogan students, but also people that are accessing the rec park for dog walking and such. So that's why I'm
I'll have
paying
to-
attention.
Yeah, I can look at it. If there's a catch basin or something nearby, we might be able to mill out just a swath to get it to drain better to a catch basin.
That's what
But
I-
it might be more elaborate than that, I don't know.
I know, but
If we should ever get rain again, I can go out and check.
Oh, it's coming.
That's how Laura engineered it, so.
yeah, I'll send you the picture.
I've seen the pictures.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Is that it
Anything
for me?
else?
I think so. I don't think so.
I'd like to thank you for taking charge of the sidewalk project.
Oh, yeah, I think,
This is the most difficult sidewalk to build that I've ever seen.
it doesn't seem that complex. I think we're gonna get through this, but I think we need to get a new number on it and
Yeah.
kind of go from there.
Well,
Yeah,
we'll wait for your news.
thank you all.
Thanks.
Zeke!
Thank you for warming them up. How are you all?
Good.
Well, good to see you in the flesh.
It has been a while. I know. Well, I guess it's been a while in person, but thanks for having me. Ready to dive in? 2 things, small tweak to the development agreement tonight, but let me do a sort of project update.
Great.
And before I do that, I haven't seen all of you in the flesh, but I have seen plenty of town employees that I owe big thanks to. Emily, I started my morning at 8:30 with Emily, and we'll end it at 8:30 today with her as well.
We promised to kick you out before then.
Good. All right. I'll try not to be that long-winded. We're having Tuesday morning meetings on site with DPW, and so the entire water, sewer, with Emily at the helm, departments are represented, and it's been going well. I think I shouldn't be the one to say that. Emily can,
Has been going very well.
Emily can confirm or deny. Good. We on the finance side, you guys have applied. You guys have approved a lot of grant applications. We put Nicholas through a little fire drill in February, as some federal funding the government shutdown was looming. We needed to pull some HUD funding quickly, and Nicholas and his department pulled through in a clutch way there. Before Jen's departure, and then with JR now, we have 5 building permits based on the final plat approval from the DRB from last year. So we've been keeping the team busy, and they have been great. And so I just figure I should start with a big appreciation for everybody on the town side, and that, Mark and David and Beth and everybody. Beth is, we put poor Beth in knots trying to get addresses done through the state, and we got through that one. But on the project side, I won't take for granted that you've driven by there in the last 6 months or 3 weeks, but we spent, when we broke ground, pretty much December 1st through about May 1st, just putting in the infrastructure, and this is with Emily's team. Roads, water, sewer, stormwater, sidewalks, rough grading, a lot of blasting, as you, I'm sure, all heard in January. That's over. And that got us to a point where we put up our first structure in 2 days. So literally the kitchens were done in East Montpelier before we had even poured concrete. The modules all showed up. Gosh, time has been a bit of a warp here, but second week in May. And then on a Thursday we put up half the building, and on the following Monday we put up the other half of the building. And I should have sent David and Mark some videos and pictures we took of that. It was pretty incredible. So that was the modular construction. Those homes are now, that's only about half the scope. We now have to put the siding, the roofing's going on right now, trim, site build the porches, make sure all the HVAC connections and all the sewer and water connections, and then seeded and planted. We're working with Emily's team. Before we can get our first CO on that, we have to make sure under the development agreement we finalized, we've upheld our end of the bargain on the infrastructure side. And so we're targeting late July, early August for the first move-ins.
Wow.
Of those first 6 units that
How many would be done by then?
6. That townhome structure you saw go up is 6 units, 2 3-bedroom and 4 2-bedroom.
That's awesome.
And those all were, under PNS pretty much immediately.
How many total in the first phase again?
So we'll have structures like that one and duplexes. There'll be 45 units. The next one, and all modularly built. The next one is going to be delivered in September, and that'll start every month. There'll be a structure delivered from there through the winter. So the first one was sort of on an island right now. And then starting in September, there'll be a constant flow through this time next year. Okay. And on until the end of 2026. That's largely through the middle income program. So 37 of those are being sold to people who make less than 150% of area median income through a VHFA subsidy. And that subsidy, like ARPA funding you guys have all talked about, theoretically evaporates at the end of 2026. But there's no lack of demand. So there's no absorption issue of us sitting there. It's just whether we're able to build and place that quickly. Immediately behind that structure that is up right now, we're going to start construction next week. We'll dig the hole and be pouring concrete the following week on the 35-unit low-income housing tax credit building that you all had a huge part in letters of support and all the funding. So that won't be a modularly built one. That'll be more conventionally stick-built, 3-story, pitched roof, 10,000 square foot stories, so a bigger building, more conventionally built over the next year. So all in what we're calling the first phase, which in our development agreement is phase A and B1 of infrastructure, and B2 of infrastructure is 80 units, and that's going to keep us busy really for the next year. And now as we get those underway, we're starting to turn our attention to the next phase types of housing, right? And those, to get past this threshold, to get this first 80 and all the infrastructure was sort of all one package deal. We had to get to 80 units in this infrastructure piece as a whole. And now we can work our way back a little more piecemeal. But it's been going really well. I mean, we've been really happy with the contractors. DPW again has been a good partner, and we've been talking about this for 3 years, and over the course of 2 days with a crane, it was really fun to see the first structure actually come out of the ground. So I hope as you all drive down Seminary Street and you see that, you know the select board and everybody at the town had a genuinely big role in getting us there. And we have had, I'll just say this is gratifying to you, I hope. We've been asked by a lot of other towns how we replicate this, and there's a lot of components that come into it, the college's partnership, the ARPA funding, all of that, but I'd say that sort of one of the small factors in the secret sauce is the DRB and select board's support and efficiency and, unwavering piece of that, and Kathleen and Mark from the town manager's position. So that is, put me in a position to tell a lot of other towns, just be as effective as Middlebury, and that's been fun to say. Want to make sure you heard that. Updates otherwise. That's sort of the abridged version of everything that's going on site. Are there any other questions or specific things you've seen or heard that you'd like to know?
You didn't mention utility conduit when you're talking about the in-ground infrastructure. Is that in there?
When you say utility conduit, do you mean telecommunications, energy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Both.
that's all in there.
Okay.
Yep, GMP is we're energized.
Are you?
Is your question, are the utilities all buried?
Yeah, that was
Yes.
part of it, and I just heard of all the pieces that were in the ground, and I didn't hear that.
Yep.
And are you?
Those are all owned by the side, but I think I focused on things that are going to be town owned
I
at some
see.
point, sewer, water.
Very good.
But yes, all the other, everything else is in. No gas line. We cracked the nut on geothermal in the multifamily building. The big holdup was domestic hot water, which is the thing that we've used gas for in our multifamily buildings up until this one. So this will be our first all-electric multifamily building, and it's really domestic hot water is the one that they cracked. That we found a geothermal partner that was able to work with us, value engineer. They'll be on site tomorrow for the first time and probably start drilling wells for that building 2 or 3 weeks.
No
So
kidding.
That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
really great.
Wow.
We weren't quite able to do it for the first townhome. So that's all electric, but it's air source heat pump mini splits.
Yep.
We're still trying to figure that out as we go, but there are components of it that are still cost prohibitive up front that we can't pass along to middle income buyers, but we could absorb on a multifamily building that we'll own as landlords.
Cool.
Other questions?
There was an issue about stormwater infiltration that we voted on in the project, that we were gonna put a sleeve on a,
So we've been, the stormwater infiltration in the sewer line that goes through
Right.
the gravity. We have started that project. It started back in March maybe, and it just got too wet, so the contractor pulled out. But they do have they've been lining that
Right.
line. And so they have to come back in and just line the actual manhole structures. That's the only piece of it that's left in that contract.
okay.
In our development agreement, there are 2 pieces of off-site infrastructure that we're contributing to. One is that project, and the second is a 2-block sidewalk. Yeah, section on Valley View from Seminary to
Brookside.
Brookside, right, excuse me.
That one,
It's all right.
we got it, that was part of that $1 million plus grant that we got last summer, and there's been a holdup at the federal level.
What?
Releasing those funds. They did email last week that they finally got the all clear
Oh,
to
great.
release them, so, once we get that grant agreement, we'll be able to start design on that sidewalk.
And I think the way the development agreement works is, our obligation to pay those contributions is the later of the actual work or our first CO. And our first CO here is gonna be in the next couple months, so the later of when we
But it's a
move.
year from this fall, right? That
Well, the requirements in the agreement have that sidewalk under construction all the through 2026. So with the funding that we have, because it's taken a year to get it, that might be a challenge getting that date.
And that's an internal town
Yep.
goal and challenge. That isn't on us. Our contribution is when it gets done, but that's sort of the DRB challenging, I think, the town to get that done for when people are going to school.
problem with getting the grant money, if you do things in advance of getting the V-Trans, they don't want to pay for it then.
Right.
It's-
Right.
V-Trans can sometimes be the agency of intransigence.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, which it shouldn't, it's not only V-Trans. So we understand that. But yeah, so those are the 2 the sewer line sleeving, and that's, the sewer line runs from Washington Street to the shared pump station on Seminary Street Extension. Yep, and then the sidewalk.
Well, it's all amazing, and great credit to you and everybody involved. There was some aerial photography taken of by Eric.
Yeah, Eric's been
Kelleran?
taking it, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
you said you worried nobody photographed it, but there was some
Yeah.
shots.
Yeah, he's, I mean, if you look him up on Facebook, he's been posting them, Eric Killoran, Killoran, I think.
Killoran.
It's good footage he's put together, yeah, it's, again, I mean, this has consumed 3 years of our lives, and we've talked about it, and to see structures go up is gratifying, and I hope it feels good in the town too.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Good. Any other questions? Because the really interesting part is about to come. Get this uninteresting stuff out of the way.
Seems fairly simple.
Yes, so this, I'll tell you the story just so we understand it's not just V-Trans that can be frustrating at the state level. You'll remember we have 3 state grants. The CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant, which goes through the Vermont Community Development Program, which is in the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And that is what Nicholas helped us, because that's a HUD-funded thing. Nicholas helped us back in, I think it was February, pull the first $700,000 of funding from that. All good. There's the CRRP, Community Recovery and Revitalization Program, which is through the Department of Economic Development under the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. We did a first amendment to this development agreement that added in a lot of language required to pull funds under that program. That's already in there. That was our first amendment. That's $750,000. So the Community Development Block Grant was $1.25 million. The Community Recovery and Revitalization Program money is another $750,000. So combined $2 million. There's another $175,000 through the Department of Housing and Community Development under ACCD in the Community Partnerships for Neighborhood Development Program. And these all have acronyms, and I could have done that all in 20 seconds in acronyms, and this is what makes it a bear. We have already pulled 157,000 of the 175,000. So there's 10% remaining, and we were trying to pull the last, in a $52 million project, $17,500. And the state said, you reflected the community, the CRRP, you made reference to the CRRP grant in your development agreement and the section 19 of the state standard grant agreement procedures, but not the Community Partnerships for Neighborhood Development. And so they said, you need to go back to your legislative body to pull the last 17,000, even after we've given you 157,000. So here I am. And I saw Mark in the hall the other day, and I made the same complaint I just made, and then I said, this is gonna take half an hour or less of all of our times, and I guess that's worth $17,000. That's a good hourly rate. So I'm happy to come and do the update and see you all in person. But that is my legislative body ask for you tonight, is to do a second amendment to the development agreement to specifically reference that program in order to pull the last 17,000 from it. David Rue, I never know. David Rue hasn't had a chance to dive into it. This is a pretty simple amendment, so your approval will pend his review of it, but all right, I'll get off my soapbox. That was my one moment.
See, who at the state made the determination that we needed to do this?
Agency of Commerce and Community Development's lawyers. I even emailed Alex Farrell, who's the commissioner, and said, can you just not make me do this? And
Right.
He said, no, we can't, you gotta do it, I'm sorry.
I would move approval of the proposed second amendment to the development agreement between the town and Summit Development LLC, subject to review and approval by town council.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comments or questions?
Fred was sick of me complaining. I like that.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thumbs up. You just haven't gotten our hourly bill yet.
Right, I know.
Times 7, 10, yeah.
Well, thank you all. I mean, the point, it was a good excuse at the end of the day to come and make sure you all know what town staff has been doing behind the scenes to make this real, and that we're really close to seeing the vertical. You saw the first vertical piece, and it's only gonna accelerate from here, and we're gonna move people in a couple months here, and that's a pretty exciting position
Well, it's
to be
great
in.
to have a periodic check-in with you, Zeke, and as you know, this is our one, like, number one priority is increases our housing stock so that we can put people in homes instead of on the street. And so, thank you for the part you're playing in this.
Yeah, well, thank you all. It's a team
Appreciate it.
effort. Yep. All right, thank you.
All right, have a
Awesome.
good evening.
Yeah, you as well.
Mind if I tee this next one up?
Please.
So, we dropped a copy of the fiscal '24 audit in your packet. Hopefully you all had an opportunity to take a look at it.
Call it what you will.
We did receive some questions, so Nick is prepared to answer those questions tonight if you'd like to do that, but this is also an opportunity, this is continuing in our commitment to provide you to have more face time with department heads, so we'll let you decide how you want to proceed, but we do have a list of questions and answers as well, and if that's okay to jump in, Nick is prepared to do that. So.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's good to see a new face since the last time I was here. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so I was racking my brain for any real exciting operational updates the past year. And finance is really that boring that I don't have a lot. Obviously, the library has to be paid for. We've got a bond application that has been completed. Kind of initial look at that. Looks like we're certainly in the ballpark of where we budgeted last year. Rates are highly volatile, so depending on when we lock it in, it'll determine exactly where we fall as far as that's concerned. Other than that, we're really just busy. End of year reconciliations, all of our regular routine end of year stuff, getting ready for September first week is more audit field work. Yet another year of audit coming up. We've continued to just be really good, continuing to see a lot of our notes, which you can kind of think of as my report card. Notes on the audit just fall off over time. Clean audit opinions. Like Mark said, we do have some questions as far as last year's audit is concerned, and I'm happy to just kind of read down the list. And
Can I ask you a question about something you already mentioned?
Yeah.
The library bond, how much money will we draw on that bond?
well, it's 11.5 million that we're applying for.
Okay, it's 11.5 million.
Yep.
Okay. And once, if we don't have to use all that 11.5 million, can we pay back lump sums, or is that 11.5 million a 30-year payback? And you keep it in a...
We've applied for 20, but yes, it is pretty much locked in for that time frame.
Okay.
I was made aware of a special loan program that's all to do with energy efficiency, so I've asked for, this is a brand new program, so I've asked for engineers to try to get all those energy efficient possible qualifying expenses together. The caveat there is it is repayable, but it's over a shorter time frame, so you've got 10 years. And it's at a flat 2% rate, so it's a really good tempting rate. If we can utilize as much of that as possible, I'd love to do it, but kind of threw that in kind of last minute, so I'm not sure if it'll come together or not. But yeah, I believe on the main bond, 20 years is kind of locked in for it.
That's what we had projected and budgeted for. What are we getting back for rates right now, Nick?
When we had originally gone through, it was like 3.4, and now it's closer to 4. So it is a little bit of a jump there. I'm hoping maybe in the past month and a half since I've spoken with them that they've come back down a bit, but yeah, a little bit of a jump.
When do you project we would need to lock it in?
Well, that's not up to us. The application is in, so I'm waiting for,
Oh, they lock it?
for next steps from them, any questions they might have, but it'll be when they get their work done.
And they determine the closing date? And we just get whatever the rate is on that date?
Pretty much.
Okay, so it's not something where we can game it and push back?
Not
I just
well.
saw a tweet, let's wait a day, yeah.
Yeah. So I will go down the list. So the first question was asking where in the audit report, which I have, I don't know if anyone else has the actual audit report handy, can we see our fund balances? And so in this context, we're talking about all 16 of our funds in the town of Middlebury. These are funds that are in our accounting system. The auditors do not look at all 16, they do group. So you have, major and non-major funds, anything they deem as non-major, they group in as one lump. But your capital fund, general fund, water, waste, those are all broken out separately, and they do have fund balances. They call it page like 5 or 7. I counted a lot more pages to get there than that, but actually 3 is where your general fund, capital, community development, and then that big grouping of non-major, which would be everything other than the enterprise funds of water and sewer. And that's on page 7. One caveat you want to, be careful of is they do factor in your water and sewer. They do factor in all of those capital goods that we have to depreciate over time. So the number at the bottom is definitely not spendable money that we have to go wild on. You do have to kind of take out our fixed investments. So yeah, then it was kind of asking to list out all those funds. I have a listing that I can get to you all. Best place if you really want fund by fund balances is going to be just a balance sheet, which I'm happy to provide. Anything short of that, it's not going to break it down at the level of detail that you might be looking for your purposes.
Do you have a count of funds? Like how many there are?
There's 16 funds within our accounting system, but then like our capital fund is broken down into 87 what we're calling funds, but
Okay.
it's projects.
87 projects?
Not all of those. Some of those are new this year, some of those have been closed this year, but that FY 25, I guess, I counted 87.
Okay.
So the second question was kind of on that point of water fund and sewer fund. Is it true that those are the most separate of the funds that you need to have an approved budget transfer at town meeting? To my knowledge and my understanding, really your water and your sewer funds are enterprise funds. They are self-sustaining. You don't have transfers between funds or into the general. If nothing else, it's a bad look. It would jeopardize grant monies, loans.
But don't they pay for some of your
Well,
time?
the
Well-
only transfer is when we bill them.
But it's seen as a reimbursement for an
Okay.
expense that the general fund paid.
Gotcha.
So it's,
Okay,
you're right.
it's a transfer, but really they're buying services from the town.
Correct, that's a great way to look at it. So they should be self-sustaining and they should, really not rely on taxpayer dollars to fund their.
So, but there are instances where, like the local option tax, the town has voted to apply that to the water project around Court Square or some, there are instances where we do.
So there is a
augment.
question later on that kind of mentions the option tax, and so I'll talk about that in a second. But so then we've got a question on whether or not interest, at what level interest is reinvested and kept track of. We do have treasury investments in water, sewer, fire equipment, conservation, and then there's some CDs in the cemetery fund. So at that level, we are reconciling those accounts within the fund. All the interest that is earned is kept track internally there. The bulk of our interest dollars lies with the general fund. I mean, we are, it's not a material amount to, be required to break that out fund by fund, water, sewer, we're well within that limit, but for the most part, we have put all that money back to the general fund, and I think certainly from a workload perspective and just my OCD, I want to have an actual account to reconcile to. Some towns, they do kind of try to guess how much of that on an average daily basis belongs to this fund or that fund. My personal preference has never been to do that. Like I say, it's certainly not material to add up, but it is up to the select board whether or not, you allocate.
So in the infrastructure committee, Heather Seeley has been impressing upon me that it's really important to have fund balances and keep money there, because the cost of the capital projects continues to increase, like fire equipment, like any of the others. So why not, accrue that interest to those to account for that inflation? And I just, I appreciate the significant revenue in the general fund to lump together other interest. So we use it for sure, but the decision of philosophically, do you want to save that for capital improvement inflation expenses or not, is what I've been wondering about.
Yeah, one of the challenges is the second you start to split funds into smaller accounts, your rate itself is going to fall. You're definitely not going to earn the same amount that you do when it's in one big account. So that's why people get into kind of estimating and guessing, and that doesn't sit well with me. I don't love, banks calculate this on a daily compounding basis. It's a huge, it requires a lot of guesswork at that point, but it can be done if that's what is decided.
Nick, what's the threshold for materiality?
I don't know that there's an exact dollar
How do you
amount.
think of it?
I would certainly think, anything below 1% would be immaterial.
Okay.
But that would depend fund by fund, how much is in that fund, but.
Yeah.
What are you asking, can you tell me what materiality means?
Well, he was just discussing that the amount of interest that he's talking about is immaterial.
Oh, okay.
And so I was trying to dig into what that
That's not to say that interest line is immaterial. It's to say that by the time you break it up into the hundreds of pieces, that it,
Sure.
wouldn't necessarily be material line by line. So that was one of the questions, how many capital projects? Who can create a capital project and start spending money under it? Town manager, director of finance, department head. This is ultimately budget-based. There are a few categories that are more general, and within that context, if we have highway construction or stormwater projects, my understanding is that Emily is able, with the town manager and the process that she goes through, to allocate those funds to different specific projects. But overwhelmingly, department by department, you don't have that authority to just decide how to spend the money or create a capital project. It has to go through the
So in the
very
capital budget,
specific.
we don't have 87 projects listed. We group security together, for security cameras, and we're starting to group things, and just as a general budgeting matter, but obviously Emily,
Well, and a lot of those are multi-year projects, so even if it existed 5 years ago, it might still be, underway. So I think all the open and active projects are listed, they might not have an annual allocation that specific year.
And if Heather were here, she'd say, well, we want to save all those fund balances in those 87, if there is any, for the inflationary projects that later come. So that I guess that's handled between her and the manager's office and his review. Okay.
So then it was asked, is there an unrestricted capital project fund balance in the capital improvement fund? And no, that is the capital improvement fund, dollar for dollar, reconciles down to the penny all of our capital projects fund balances. So it is all in the category of committed fund balance, meaning the voters and the select board have gotten together to commit those funds. They could be moved at your level and, you know, voters level. When a town meeting article generally directs, so here's the local option tax question, generally directs X number of dollars of local option tax revenues to offset unspecified capital improvements. How is it decided which capital improvement project accounts get funded with such money? So this is something that Mark and I have talked about, and we're really, I think, gearing up to hopefully kind of shift. We've discussed a lot about it last year with the local option tax and the Cross Street Bridge Fund and just the level of, you know, general confusion that can occur. So I think it goes back to the fact that those articles that are being warned aren't an additional transfer of money. It is taking the cost of that project and offsetting the capital fund transfer itself. So it's saying, can we use some of this local option tax money to offset the capital project transfer? So it is not.
So like the warning this year had two items selected, the police reuse and the Exchange Street sidewalk, and then $1 million or so to offset other capital improvements. And just wondering whether the larger offsetting one, where that goes, if and how we might simplify this for everybody in the future.
Yeah. Well, I think rolling back some of these articles might be a good thing in the future.
What do you mean by rolling back?
Well, last year when we were going through budgeting, it was kind of determined that they weren't necessarily legally required. But I mean, this is not.
So, okay, I think what you're referring to is that the local option money is actually part of the general fund. And since it's already in the general fund, the voters don't need to vote to transfer. But it's been our practice because of the original way this was proposed, connected to the Cross Street Bridge maintenance, to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think we kind of came close to this idea last year, but maybe we weren't ready for it. The idea of calling it, instead of the Cross Street Bridge Fund, calling it the local option tax fund. And in the regular general budget, showing that as amount of revenue, and then showing the expenditures, just since it's already part of it, not having to go through the redundant exercise of voting particular pieces.
Exactly.
And again, I think that makes a ton of sense. As I said, $1 is very fungible. Heather advocated for keeping those actions in as kind of a friction on spending this money. That it puts it in front of the people to recognize that we are taking this money and using it for purposes other than were initially imagined.
Yeah.
She's also no longer a member. She's also no longer a member of this board.
I still have a lot of respect for Heather.
Of course.
And I think her philosophy is to keep the voters engaged with the importance of funding capital projects. And
sure.
I can appreciate that, but when it's already voted in Article 2 as part of the general budget that the money's coming in and it's going out, to then vote it again is kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, it leads to confusion, and so I guess it's possible that maybe there's a reworking of it, and verbiage could change that makes it a little clearer, as to what's actually happening there. Because to my way of thinking, funds are not being allocated to those capital projects. We're saying, can we offset the cost of those capital projects in the general fund? So, in effect, we put those there to lower the tax rate increase.
Exactly.
And we found the capital projects, to answer the question, we found the capital projects that happened to come really, really, really close to the amount you wanted to offset the tax rate by. So,
Emily was looking at the projections for what we should reserve for the required maintenance on the Cross Street Bridge. And that was, if we were going to change the way we handled it, that was kind of a necessary step, was to make sure that we had defined what that was in those funds, and then the rest, we could go into the general fund.
Yeah, I think the Cross Street, what should be project number 88, would have an amount that is set for that, and
That was what we kind of talked about, and Emily said that she was gonna get an updated amount.
Yeah, I
So
was
we
gonna
should
say.
follow up on that. It'd be something that
That could simplify our budget
could simplify.
considerably. Yeah, I'm
simplify
all for
my
that.
job a little bit.
And yeah, as I told you at Shaw's, anything we can do to make things clearer from your side of things and our side of things, I think we're interested in.
That would be a huge, huge step. All right, so number 8. At what level of expenditure over town meeting approved budget amounts is an emergency spending authorization required, and who has to make that declaration / authorization? Is there a legal limit such as would require warning a special town meeting? So I do know that, there is, provision for emergency spending, but it really, I think, in terms of any specific rules, we'd have to look at the town charter, because I think that is determined on the charter town by town basis. I could be wrong there.
is there something in our charter now about this?
I don't know the answer to that.
We have a committee on that.
Yeah, we've got a
We'll look at
version of it in Google Docs here.
So I do believe that the select board is who would make that emergency declaration. And if certainly we were spending 5+% over, what we were anticipating, we've always been very conservative and not run into the issue, but you would want to go back to voters and, warn a special meeting.
Fred, section 1306D, in cases of emergency, the select board may appropriate funds or borrow money in the name of the town. The total combined emergency appropriations and borrowing in any year shall not exceed 5% of the amount voted at the annual meeting as the town budget.
Amazing, he knew this even though,
That was a guess.
So just out of curiosity, do we have a different auditor this year, that why he's asking this kind of, or was it based upon the floods and what some of, just the educational part for us?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Why are they asking those types of questions?
These aren't from the auditors.
No.
These are from
Probably Fred's questions, can't you tell?
an anonymous member of the board.
And honestly, Fred.
It's like, why is the auditor wasting our time with this stuff?
No, the question came from.
no, but it's a thing, that both at the federal level, and
Yeah.
Scott
Okay.
has invoked this recently for purposes that are, and God forbid we have an emergency that's that large, but it could happen. I'm just wondering how it would work if we had something that was
Yeah.
bad or worse, what would we have to do? So over 5%, we'd have to go to the voters. Okay.
What is the unrestricted general fund balance? So as of 5/23/25, it was $3,592,532.61.
532.61.
And I would call that unassigned.
Yeah, unassigned.
Unrestricted just means a third party hasn't bound us. Unassigned means it's truly available. And then goes on to ask, you know, what would be a comfortable safety net? What do you want to keep in your unassigned?
Because in between tax collection dates, you have like payroll and other emergencies, things
I
come
mean,
up.
we have an extremely strong, because that might be the unassigned balance, but we have committed capital projects that aren't all going to be spent year one. So we have an extremely strong cash flow position, but I still think, you know, and I look at it more like a personal budget, you know, you want 3 to 6 months of your operating budget kind of in a savings.
3 to 6 months.
And we are at the very low end of that. We're at just under 3%, or 3 months.
Terrific.
Then went on to ask if there is an audit reported deficit in a fund such as the Memorial Sports Center Fund, what actions are advised or required to be taken. So there is a small deficit in the Memorial Sports Center at any given time, but we have loans that we pay out in advance, and then we get reimbursed by Friends of Middlebury Hockey for those loans. So at any given time, we tend to kind of be in a deficit.
So that audit's just a snapshot in time.
It's just a snapshot in time, and
We don't
it's
have to worry about
always
that project.
chasing zero. And if there's, you know, ultimately the activities that have been handled in that fund in the past are recreation type activities, and we do, you know, charge for the services and spend for the services. So if at any point in the past there was a money losing activity, you know, I guess I'm not 100% sure on the flow of the Memorial Sports Center and, you know, what set that up, but I would assume that the general fund would have a stake in that. So I do think, in terms of actually listing the funds, it'd be more helpful to just get a balance sheet to you all, and
Got a question.
okay.
So on page, it says 7, but I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
Under the sewer and water funds, it says that the value of buildings, improvements, and infrastructure for the sewer fund is $11.1 million. We have a $50 million project going on those buildings. It seems to me that their value is probably in total more than $11 million at this point.
It's just cost, so that's,
Okay.
it's just at cost.
I see.
Right.
So this was the cost of building
20
what
years ago.
currently exists in the sewer.
Yeah. I just, for the first time, had to get rid of, on our spreadsheets, the 2 library additions, because they are now destroyed.
Right.
And
We're
I
no
forget-
longer
I forget the
carrying that
exact
asset.
cost that's on that sheet.
Yeah.
I mean, it was ridiculous what they could build.
course.
So
Right.
that type of thing multiplied by, you know,
I see.
thousands of different physical things.
Yeah.
And you get an 11 million number when it might be
Yeah, at a zero,
hundreds,
whatever.
you know, now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is
That's completely at cost.
interesting.
Were those buildings fully depreciated?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And how about is there still 10 years left on the sewer project, or how long ago was
I
that?
don't know that off the top of my head. I think that was long enough ago that
What advantage do we get depreciating a government non-PAC? Is it just to do it? I mean,
it still factors into loans and external users of this, but I mean, we don't get a tax advantage.
no, we don't.
No, just general accounting practice.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting.
Went over my 10 minutes by a little bit.
Other questions?
Oh, you did, thank you very much.
Was there any other questions?
I think it's great to have you here. Thanks for coming in, spending your evening with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Nick. So we have Danielle Wallace here. She's hopped on to give us a quick update on a grant that the Select Board directed last fall. So Danielle, if you can hear me, I'm going to promote you, and if you accept it, you can start whenever you get it. Yeah.
Okay,
Hello.
Hi, Danielle.
So sorry about missing the last meeting. I don't have a good excuse. I just forgot. But thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to come and chat with the just community. And for the last, what is it, 3 years, we've received opiate settlement funds from the town of Middlebury. And first off, we are incredibly grateful for the investment that Middlebury makes in social services. It's so important for the health of our communities overall. And to be a direct benefit of that money coming into towns is just such a benefit to the center and the services that we provide. And not all towns in Addison County have decided to do that with their funds, so opiate funds specifically, so we're just so grateful to have your support. In the past, we put it towards direct services and really our general practices. But over the last 2.5 years, we've been on a search to find a physical location that meets the needs of our population, and that is comfortable to work in and really feels like a welcoming place for recovery. And we have designed our new office space 3 times at this point. But it's gonna happen this time. I'm confident that it is. And just the other projects, you know, whether it was just too big for what we are, or we didn't have the support of our landlord at our previous location when it came down to it. And so we looked at whether we looked for a new building to lease or to purchase a building. And we ended up purchasing 79 Court Street, which really brings us out onto the main road of Middlebury, which for exposure is so wonderful. And we received this opiate settlement funds right around the time when we were looking to put a deposit down on the property. And for a small nonprofit like us, coming up with a $25,000 deposit is a really big lift. I came to the Selectboard and just to get the support of using those funds for that purpose, and got support for that, and that's what we did with the entirety of those funds last year. So that was part of putting the deposit down on the building. Following that, we've actually paid off the building entirely from donors. So we no longer have a mortgage on 79 Court Street, which was not, I mean, we were hoping that, but it looked like it was going to take quite a long time to do that. And just because of the generosity of this community, we were able to do that really quickly. And just here to answer any questions that anyone has. Also, we are having, part of being right on the main road of Middlebury is the visibility allows us to do some cool things and to hopefully make them more successful. And we just installed a public health vending machine at our property, and our ribbon cutting is next Tuesday, June 3rd at 10 a.m. Welcome, anybody is welcome to come. It's just really to see the new machine, also to see our new space, and to meet our staff. So we're here for any questions, anything anybody has, any comments anybody has.
Questions, anyone?
Danielle, there's been some reporting that nationwide and statewide maybe we're cresting the fentanyl epidemic. Do you have any signs of hope for our community and our state?
Yeah, I think, and again, I think that the opiate crisis, right, is because of the instant lethality of it is out there and is newsworthy. But I mean, what we see is we have a alcohol problem that is far more devastating than our opiate problem in Addison County. Last I looked, Addison County had, I think it's 2 now, but in the last 14 months have had 2 overdose deaths in Addison County, which is tremendous. So they're not exactly sure why we're seeing this shift and why it does look like overdose deaths are down. I think a lot of it has to do with just getting Narcan out there, the education around Narcan, making it available and free. So yeah, we are seeing that. But again, the alcohol problem is still alive and well, and that is the majority of what we see in this county is alcohol misuse.
Yeah, thanks.
Interesting.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Danielle. It's pretty exciting that you've already been able to pay off that property. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks for your great work for this town.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next agenda item, and we had a volunteer for the town's energy committee, Christopher Ross. We nominated Christopher in the last board meeting, and following our process, this would allow us to appoint him. Pleasure of the board.
I move to appoint Christopher Ross to the Town of Middlebury's Energy Committee.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thumbs up. Here we go. Let's see, 10, 11, 12 are deferred. That gets to you, David.
Alrighty. So we have before us this evening the most recent version of a recommendation from the Policy Review Committee to amend the town's purchasing policy in a couple of ways. This came initially from an inquiry that the board had to look into sole source exemptions, and that led to a broader discussion. As we've done in the past, we try to look at what other similar sized Vermont communities have done, as well as getting input from the staff who are going to be affected. So Nick and his team took a look at it, and especially the folks like in police and public works who are tending to be the ones buying the bigger things, and their experiences. Dave DiBiase and his background with the state was really helpful. I think, not surprisingly, when a new person comes in an organization, they sometimes see things that maybe aren't as clear to folks who've been here longer. So he said maybe we should take a look at some of these numbers. So he was a helpful advocate. So you have essentially four proposed changes here. You have thresholds that you currently have in place about what has to go before the manager and then what has to go to the select board. That is currently 1,000 and 10,000. We are suggesting that it would be 10,000 and 40,000. And we did research other towns. You can see these aren't outlier numbers. These are pretty down the middle of the road. We talked about increasing the threshold between a simplified bidding process, which is when you essentially gather a couple of quotes and pick one, versus the much more structured formal bidding process, pushing that threshold from 10 to 40,000. The one you heard last meeting with Dave Shaw, similarly pushing that threshold of what triggers a select board required approval of a sole source purchase from 10 to 20,000. And the last piece is to, right now, your policy requires somebody to mail a bid response in or drop it off physically. We talked to a few other towns and they allow electronic submittals, so the logic would be the same, right? You don't open that document somebody hands you until the day of the bidding. You don't open the email attachment until the day of the bidding, right? So the spirit of it is that somebody can email in a bid response. So all of these are based on the idea that the more money you spend, the more oversight you should have. But as costs have gone up and inflation continues, these numbers need to gradually increase, or else you're going to start having more oversight than you originally intended on smaller purchases. Interestingly, back in 2022, the board kind of went through this whole exercise. It's in your minutes from January, and you tweaked all these numbers. So you went through the exercise, but you tweaked them in a fairly small way. The previous amount was $500 for the
We doubled it.
Yeah, we doubled it. Yeah, so we're gonna do a little more than
And
double
now
it in front of
10x.
us. But I think for things like this, where there's monetary thresholds over time, it's a good less improbably that some of these others, we should circle back every few years and have a discussion and see where other towns are. Interestingly, as Andy saw and Izzy in the committee, there are towns all over the place. I mean, it's not as if it's just, you've got towns that have $100,000 before anything goes to the select board. You've got towns where nothing goes to the select board. So it's a really, depends a lot, I guess, on the culture of those towns and what have you. So that's the short of it. That's the proposed change in front of you for your purchasing policy.
Thoughts from the board?
I don't oppose this at all, but the one thing this process has allowed us to do is to hear what's going on, to find out things that are failing, things that are being replaced. It's always done it. So is there some way we can still have a feedback to us about when these unbudgeted items, or if they are budgeted, or?
That's the department head update that we're gonna be doing, I think everyone's coming twice, right, a year now? And
Yep.
so that could be a great opportunity for somebody to share lots of updates with you about what's been happening in the department.
Yeah, but then you're gonna give us they're gonna reel off a list of these things. Wouldn't it be easier to?
Get on the warrant review.
I don't want to review it. I just want to know what's going on in town. That's one of the most difficult things we have. Particularly, Mark has actually improved that significantly. So, when they're buying parts for failures and stuff like that, it gives us a sense of what's going on instead of finding out that you've made 25 below $10,000 purchases for the wastewater treatment plant in the last 2 weeks, and we won't know it. So
That's fair. I mean, that is one of the changes, right? You can see in the memo that when you increase the threshold, the numbers that are going to come in front of you go down. That is a reality of this proposed change. Dan, let me ask, are you the Dan on Zoom, or is there another Dan? That's not your account on Zoom, right? That's somebody else?
That's not mine, no.
Okay.
Dan personal?
Okay, so we'll
It's not me.
check in with that Dan in a second. Just wanted to ask.
One, on the last page of this, relating to professional services, it says the bid process shall not apply to the selection of providers for services that are characterized by a high degree of professional judgment and discretion, including legal, financial, auditing, engineering, risk management, and insurance.
Professional
I just
services,
wondered
yeah.
that, about having no limit at all, and it's totally I guess it's the department head, and if the manager says, okay, we're gonna continue to put everything in with one provider that we like, and
So
I just wondered about.
it's existing.
Yeah, that's existing. That's already an existing policy that we have.
I know, I just wonder about it. For years, we worked with one engineering firm, Phelps Engineering, and there was some criticism about, we became reliant on that, and the same engineering firm that said, here's what you need to do, was then in an excellent position because of that knowledge to then bid for the construction or bidding process and the inspection process, and it just began to look like we weren't doing anything competitively in terms of our purchasing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just I don't know there's any particular problem about this now. The whole purpose of this is to having bids and procuring things competitively is to not put all our eggs in one basket like that. And I just wonder about it for professional services, how you decide when you want to diversify and reach out.
Because that's an existing section, we didn't look into researching it, but one question that may be helpful for us to look into is how often it actually gets used, right? Because we had a similar concern from the board about the sole source purchasing last year, and we talked to finance. We did some research about you for the last few years, and the reality was that there weren't as many coming to the board, I think, as you may have thought. I think there was a decreasing number over the years. It kind of peaked during COVID and had gone down since. So to your point, we could go back and see how often we've triggered this.
Wasn't any comparative information with the other towns on that particular issue, and I just wondered if we're unique in that, or other towns try to spread their money around as well.
In the sense that they have a professional services exemption from the bidding process?
Or some guideline, or what, I don't know, I just wondered about it.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like that's the kind of thing where you might solicit rates that are gonna be good for however long and keep that kind of qualified provider information available and do something like that for
We're having a hard
engineering
time
and
getting legal services
Indeed.
these days, you know, and,
Sure. Timely legal services.
yeah. Take what you can get, I think, some of them.
Yeah.
We're having some of those conversations internally too.
Yeah, but
I've been giving it some thought,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to figure out how you do what Dan wants, which is to stay informed,
Yeah.
and also make sure that there's oversight. There's, if you have the wrong, any system with a bad player, and you can, if you give them a $10,000 limit, they want to get something done, they can do $3 $500 ones. So I wonder about just reporting major expenses. And the reason why I say that is, like, on vehicles, if we don't have visibility on a vehicle eating us alive on repairs, we may not choose to rotate that out of the fleet as fast as it should. And, I don't know, I just wonder about how do we adopt this, but keep the select board just in the know, but not having to approve it. And really, it's to keep the manager, because you don't go, I assume you don't go through all the check warrants. But as a manager, you need to know, is there a simplified report of everything over a certain limit that could feed up from the department heads? They should be managing their budget, and they should know when they're spending over routine. We don't need every routine thing, but if we're seeing a trend, that allows you to pick out trends faster. I don't know, I'm just thinking about that. That's not a policy, that's a management thing.
one place where that might live is a narrative piece within the town manager's report in the packet.
We could try to see if a report could be
Yeah, we could
produced
just, or the department head could just do a brief memo
Right.
with some updates, right? for
Paragraph.
that. Yeah, a paragraph, that would be helpful.
I'm just wondering if there's an automated way to do it out of our accounting system.
Possibly, but-
Nemrick?
Yeah, it's a challenging system, so.
I have a question. I hear what you're saying, but I don't understand if it sounds like the intention of raising those numbers for this policy is because the cost of items has risen enough that you're seeing enough of these big deal items that you have to repair or that we would have to be notified about are actually rising above these new numbers. So I'm not sure, it feels sort of counterintuitive to then go back and report the smaller ones, because it seems like the reason we're making this policy change is because you're not seeing as many of those smaller.
I think we're seeing plenty of, if you look at the bills, we see plenty of bills all over. I think it's the amount of time, we've started trying to have fewer things come to us in, that were really slam dunks. It's like, well, of course we're gonna do that. Yeah. When it comes in and there's no questions and we're like, of course we're gonna do that, is it really something that ought to come to the select board on everything? And the 40,000 is a huge jump. The what was $5,000 stuff that we bumped to 10, there's no way it's 40. But so we're making a leap of faith here, saying that we have great staff and we should empower them to do more without having to come and tie up, and that we should be working more not on the daily management aspect, which we pay a town manager to do, but that we should be working more on planning and looking at how can we do things better, how can we ensure the lifeblood of Middlebury keeps going, and spend our 2 hours that we get together every 2 weeks doing some of those things versus an hour of presentations on buying filters
New
for
fire
the,
protective gear and.
or new fire
yeah.
protective gear. And we were, and, you know, we saw, according to this, we saw 24 of those presentations last year.
One a meeting.
That's one on average.
Yeah.
Side note, just because I got a text from Dan Rafferty, he is Dan Personal.
Oh, okay.
And if he's still there,
Yep.
he is waiting for a chance to ask a question.
There he is. Do you want to do that now? Or do you want
Go ahead.
Okay. Dan, we're going to allow you to talk. There you go, Dan.
Thank you. Am I on?
Yes,
Yeah.
you are.
Okay, sorry about the confusion. Yeah, I won't speak personally, but I don't know why I was labeled that way as my username. So, the timing of this question is maybe a little outside what you guys are discussing, but we had the purchase policy, a little sort of addendum, I guess, that the Energy Committee tracks was that renewable energy policy purchasing aspect that got approved by the Selectboard in the fall of 2018. So I was just wondering, as this policy gets reviewed in its entirety and maybe gets approved by you all, does that effectively, because I don't see any text from that in this, does that still live as a kind of side guidance, or if the text does not make this policy as you're reviewing it, does it essentially disappear?
Well, the Energy Committee doesn't have staff.
Well, there's this one.
So,
Which sunset, right?
So this is a Dan, if we're going to share the screen, if you bear with us for a second. So the short answer is the Select Board adopted a separate, and you're correct, sort of a unique aspect of purchasing in regarding to vehicles and equipment. This is the one that I think you've often come across in the conversations about vehicles and other town equipment. So the changes that were in front of us tonight don't invalidate this at all. This is a separate policy that's, to the best of my knowledge, still standing.
What's the date on that?
Thank you. Just was sort of checking in on if the whole, because I could tell that you're going from some line item tweaks to a sort of overall review. So I just was finding out about that. And I'm not trying to turn this discussion into how well or not this policy is or what you all want to do with it. I just was trying to understand if you approve the policy in front of you that doesn't have any of this language, if that was effectively striking it out, but that's not what I'm hearing.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Any other questions or things you want us to look further into?
Yeah, just checking the minutes from the approval of that.
The minutes of 2018?
Yeah, it was moved with a mandatory review in 1 year, which never happened.
How do you know it never happened?
Because I checked last time this came up. I looked for the review in later minutes.
So is this something the policy review committee should, or the energy committee, who do you want to review this?
We've had, not to get off track onto this other policy, but there's been discussions, I've heard this discussion before, where the Energy Committee and Bill and Emily, you've all been a part of, where there was this policy put in place about how we buy vehicles, and oftentimes you were never getting to the point where you could utilize the policy because we weren't getting bids back on the vehicles relating to that. This is the policy that you initially had a percentage put into, and then you took it out before you adopted it. This is,
Yep.
Andy, this is coming back to me as
Oh, yeah.
we had this discussion at some
We
point.
did.
So Yeah, my understanding is it has to do more with the market of the vehicles, so the policy Dan was referring to is often, we don't get a chance to utilize it because we're not getting enough responses on the bid proposals for EVs and hybrids. Hopefully I'm paraphrasing that right.
Okay, back to the town purchase policy. And my comments aren't really impactful on whether we adopt or don't adopt the policy, or just thoughts on ways that you could keep the board informed and make sure that you, that we're tracking the health of our facilities, the health of our vehicles, all of our assets.
Everything over 10 is going through Mark, right, under this policy?
Right.
So
And that's
he's-
really the key.
That's
now.
that's the choke point where he
Yeah.
can inform us
Yeah.
if we need to know what's going on.
Yeah. There you go. But on this, anybody else have any comments on it? What's the pleasure of the board on this?
I'd like to move the approval of the proposed changes to the town of Middlebury's purchasing policy.
Second.
Been seconded. Comments on that? And can we get back to see?
There we go.
Isabel,
Izzy.
Izzy, I was missing you here. Didn't see you for a vote.
Oh my gosh, my heart. Double thumbs up coming from Izzy for this work, and shout out to the policy committee.
Well, she's on.
Oh, man. And I thought you might have fallen asleep without having the visibility. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We're ready to take a vote. All in favor of the purchasing policy amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Aye?
There it is.
It's unanimous, okay.
Another victory for the policy review committee.
You know, that-
Boy, you guys are
are-
racking them up, aren't you?
Racking them up. There we
You
go.
guys are doing some good work. We gotta send a bunch more your way.
Yeah, let's do it.
Board member concerns. Fred?
I was saddened to hear the passing of John Tenney.
Oh, really?
On Saturday. He just announced his retirement Friday, and I didn't have enough time in retirement that he deserved.
When did that happen?
Saturday, I heard.
This weekend.
My gosh.
Our dogs were romping, and I was talking to him Friday or Saturday at Mary Hogan Park,
When's his funeral? Does anybody know?
and he seemed in good health.
Didn't announced yet, but anyway, he was a select board chair for a number of years, and I first encountered him when he was working as a building Middlebury East condominiums, 1981. And so he's been around a lot of years, and a lot of things privately and publicly with the town. Switching subjects, the town, school, Emily's jogged my memory when Emily was mentioning that the school and the town working on this stormwater project. Is there any progress on the rec park lease, converting that to something that we own and so forth before the school reforms?
I have an email out to the school district to sit down and have that conversation. I have not received a reply yet.
Okay, so you're
But
moving on.
In
Good.
fairness, it went out late last week, so.
I guess the only other concern I have is that and this has nothing to do with John Tenney personally, but the St. Stephen's turf restoration, it was represented last fall that their project would be done by the winter, and I'd been away for a while, but I came back, and even though I heard it said that work is being done on that, the same piles of stone are on the side of where the Festival in the Green is going to be in a month or so. And I just worry about it being a festival of mud. And I wonder, to be so strident on this, but what can the town do other than, can the public assemblage permit for St. Stephen's, they use it for, their peasant market, be conditioned on them coming up, renting a roll of AstroTurf or providing some other appropriate surface for I would, I don't want to
I mean, it's been approved for a
manage
really long
that
time.
ask carefully, but I think Festival on the Green certainly is planning, counting on that being usable, and I just wonder if there's a way to make progress towards that, given the late state of the year that we're in.
Yeah,
Talked
that's a
about-
good question.
Sorry. I met with Emily this morning. We did talk about that. We still have 6-ish weeks before festival. They are working every day over there trying to wrap that project up. I don't know if they intend to rope it off, but she was gonna swing by there
Yeah,
after.
the piles of stone have been there for a few weeks.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how much they're working on the side that I'm worried about. But anyway,
Yeah.
those are my
Anyway.
concerns. Thank you.
It's tough because like the solution to that is like a liquidated damages clause or something. But you don't tend to think when you hear something's going to be done in December that it will impact an event in July. Yeah.
We've had some extraordinary weather.
Recently.
And, I mean, I would hate to create friction with St. Stephen's, given how supportive of the community they've been, and the amount of times they've endured our inconvenience. So I think putting pressure on them to put pressure on their contractor is probably the right thing versus going after liquidated
They have an interest
damages.
'cause they
They
bring
want
money.
it done too, just like anybody else. Yeah, there's probably a shortage of help on the contractor side too. I mean, every place you drive around here, there's for hire, help wanted signs down my way.
We'll check in with them.
But it is concerning that it's gone on this long. I mean, we've got a good stroke of weather right now. Hopefully they can nail it. Dan?
A couple things about the library groundbreaking ceremony tomorrow at 3:00, which is exciting. And I just earlier tonight received an email from Judith. I was just looking for it. So in the planning of the budgeting for the library, they thought there was going to be incentives. We budgeted, I think, Efficiency Vermont incentives of like $7,500. And Efficiency Vermont has responded, and there's potential of $95,000 in incentives, which is kind of a neat windfall.
Great.
So, just came up.
Terrific.
Very new news.
Megan?
I just wanted to share that because everyone's been talking about stormwater, that I went to the Addison County Riverwatch Rain Garden workshop this past weekend, and it was super awesome, and I learned so much about vegetated swales and what people can do in their own yards to contain and filter runoff. And it was really informative. And also I learned that Addison County Riverwatch will send somebody to your house for a free consultation to like look at what you can do with your property to improve your own drainage and landscape. So I'm going to do it, and I'm excited. I just wanted to share that with everybody else.
Anything about how not to have your driveway washed away to the middle of the street?
Yes, actually.
We'll talk.
Yeah, these rails, I'll tell you about it
Okay.
later. But yeah, it was really cool, and I was, I had never done anything with Addison County Riverwatch before, so I was like,
Awesome.
cool, this is awesome.
Rod?
I feel sorry for John Tenney's passing. I know his wife personally very well for a long time. I didn't know about this, so sorry about that. Other than that, multiple graduations and too stressed out, too busy. Congrats, grads, all over, I guess.
Izzy?
Make sure you nominate your dogs for dog mayor. Very important. Probably the most important thing going on right now.
You have a dog?
Did you see the dog in the parade?
No,
Oh, you were.
I'm a renter. I don't have a dog.
One of the candidates was in the Memorial Day parade.
You have 3 days.
I saw that.
Ed.
Yep.
What date? We could
You have till
nominate
the
your dog,
30th
but
to-
that's,
to-
isn't that some,
The voting's in June
probably
on their
not
website.
legal to have his own, another relative in the town office with him, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Banned from office.
Andy?
I am gonna pass this evening.
Do we have an executive session?
It says we do.
Yeah, okay.
Nothing for you?
I'm gonna pass and move on. I was gonna talk about John.
Yeah.
It's a pretty sad moment
Wow.
for.
Well, that's
for-
shocking.
For all of us, you built the building for us where he was the contractor we worked with.
Built the addition to the church.
Church?
Yep.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
served with him on the board?
What's that?
Did you serve with?
I served with him on, Public Works.
Okay.
Yeah. John was, chair of the board when I was on Public Works, so.
Yeah, man. He was talking about all the projects in town that he had a piece in, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
that day or the day before.
That was a really nice, retirement thing that.
Oh, in the paper. That was
in the
lovely.
paper. Wasn't that really well
Yeah.
done? I thought that was pretty cool.
So is there anything we as a town can do to recognize that, one of those whereas documents we produce all the time? There's competition for the bridge
Okay.
now.
But you wanna take us into executive
Yeah,
session?
let me do that before I say anything sillier. I move to enter into executive session with the town manager, assistant town manager, and director of administration related to the appointment of a public officer or employee as allowed under Title I, Section 313A3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody again? Okay, moving into executive session. Be right back.
And is there a voting action after?
No.
Okay. You stop recording, Mark?